Om Stapakaya ca dharmasya sarvadharmasvarupine Stapakaya ca dharmasya sarvadharmasvarupine Avatara varisthaya Ramakrishna te namah. Asato ma sadgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya Asato ma sadgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityorma mritangamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Let us bow down to Sri Ramakrishna, the embodiment of all religions, the Supreme God incarnate. Let us pray to Him to remove all our ignorance, to light the lamp of knowledge, to dispel the darkness of ignorance, to lead us towards immortality. We will be celebrating Sri Ramakrishna's birthday on Sunday, coming Sunday, that is 9th. Friday we observe Shivaratri, we have got special puja and devotional singing. Saturday we have Shivanam Sankirtan. Sunday we will celebrate Sri Ramakrishna's birthday. There will be puja and homa in the morning. So all of you, please try to attend these programs. So today I am speaking on Sri Ramakrishna. Whenever we study his life and teachings, they inspire us towards spiritual goal. They give a kind of awakening to our inherent spiritual tendencies. So, it is really worship to study the life and teachings of Sri Ramakrishna. How much he totally dedicated his whole life totally for spiritual life. It transformed his life into a sublime poem. He has a message for this tormented world. It's a message that cuts across the multiplicity of faiths and hostilities they have generated. That message is very simple, very grand. It is beneath all the plurality of faiths lives one basic truth, one essential taste, and one flavor, that of love, which, besides binding man to God, also binds man to man. His life was one of universalism in practice. To understand God, we should read Sri Ramakrishna, his life and teachings, how he manifested love in all its aspects, how through love he got the vision of the Divine Mother, how through love he integrated all the religions of the world, and how through love he could establish harmony among the religions. The followers of Ramakrishna should follow Sri Ramakrishna's teachings in letter and spirit. We are all one, no conflict. All are the children of God. God is that love. We have to approach Him through love, to see Him, to talk to Him, to be merged with Him. Love is most essential factor. Mahatma Gandhiji remarked, Sri Ramakrishna was a living embodiment of godliness. In this age of skepticism, Sri Ramakrishna presents an example of a bright and living faith which gives solace to thousands who would otherwise have remained without spiritual light. Sri Ramakrishna, he was born in a pious Brahmin family. He neither studied Sanskrit like a Pandit, nor took up responsibilities as head of a family or household. By 6, he was familiar with all the stories of the Indian epics and Puranas. So he got all his formative period well established on the Indian moral and spiritual values. From his childhood, he was prone to experiences of trance and ecstasy, and these became more and more frequent with him as he grew older. Whenever he saw a beautiful sight, whenever he would hear a beautiful melody of God's name being sung, he tended to lose himself in deep emotion, sometimes becoming completely oblivious of his surroundings. His experience was basically aesthetic, an experience in which he didn't comprehend reality in parts, but as an organic whole, of which he was himself an indistinguishable part. So by divine providence, rather than by choice, Sri Ramakrishna started as an ordinary temple priest. But soon he engaged in a mystic quest which in moments of fruition wiped out both the image and the worshipper in an ineffable ecstasy. He had tremendous experience. He was overwhelmed with joy when he had the vision of the Divine Mother. When he spoke, the content of his language was that of the Upanishads. He was humble to a point of self-effacement. He has shown through his life to be spiritual means to be completely humble. That is a test of your spirituality. The test of your spirituality is you should be completely free from ego. Be humbler than the blade of grass. That is the test of spirituality. And Sri Ramakrishna was like that. He says in the Gospel, I am the most insignificant of the insignificant, the lowest of the lowly. I am the servant of the servants of God. Krishna alone is great. These are the words of Sri Ramakrishna himself. He was a personification of truth. He meant what he said. When he went to meet Girish Chandra Ghosh, the famous dramatist of the time, when Girish Chandra Ghosh came to receive him, Sri Ramakrishna bowed down to him as a mark of respect. Girish Chandra Ghosh was stunned. He paid back by bowing down to Sri Ramakrishna. Then again Sri Ramakrishna repeated. It went on for some time. Sri Ramakrishna could not be defeated. The more Girish Chandra Ghosh bowed down, the more Sri Ramakrishna would bow down to him. There was no hypocrisy. Completely simple and sincere. He also spoke with supreme self-assurance and authority on matters of philosophy, ethics, religion, and realization. There is an incident. One day, Hazra, one of the devotees who used to live in Dakshineshwar temple, when Sri Ramakrishna was there, this devotee pretended to be a scholar. One day he was explaining Tattva Jnana as the knowledge of 24 cosmic principles, in which he included the 6 passions. Immediately, Sri Ramakrishna corrected him. What are you talking about? What sort of explanation you are giving? What's your definition about Tattva Jnana you are giving about? He corrected him. He said, Tattva Jnana really means knowledge of the self. And he explained him further. The word Tat means the supreme self. Tvam means the embodied soul. Tattva Jnana. Tat, Tva, Jnana. Tva is Tvam, Tva. Both are same. In Sanskrit, it's called Tvam or Tva. Both are same. So Sri Ramakrishna is explaining. Tat means that, Tvam means embodied soul. One attains supreme knowledge or Tattva Jnana by realizing the identity of the embodied soul with the supreme self. That's the meaning of Tattva Jnana. What sort of meaning you are giving? You are telling Tattva Jnana includes 6 passions. What sort of knowledge is that? I had already told Sri Ramakrishna never studied Sanskrit. He was not a scholar in the academic sense, but he was the scholar in the real sense of the term. At another time, Hazra said, the same devotee, he was very proud of his caste. He was telling, only those who are born Brahmins attain liberation. Again Sri Ramakrishna corrected him. Don't say like that. Everyone, even those of low birth, can attain liberation through bhakti or love of God, devoid of selfish motive. God is approachable by anybody. God can be seen by anyone. These are the decisive words of Sri Ramakrishna, the personification of spirituality. Who realized God, who knew God, and who talked nothing but God throughout his life, unto the last drop of his life. He talked about God and God alone. He never wasted his words in any other matters. He used all his resources to teach humanity the path to spirituality. He is the one who lighted the lamp of knowledge, the spiritual knowledge, The knowledge that gives you immense peace, immense joy, immense bliss. The knowledge that removes all suffering, misery. During the time of his religious austerities, his one consuming desire was to have the continual vision of God, whom he worshipped as the Divine Mother Kali. When he was appointed as the priest of Kali temple, he thought he got an opportunity to come directly face to face with God, to experiment his life on God, to see whether God could be realized in this very life, not after death. Who knows what will happen after death? The achievement is you should see right now. And he was prepared to undergo any discipline for that matter. He was prepared to sacrifice anything for that matter. And he was ready for that. He was mentally prepared for that. His whole life was a life of total renunciation. Tyagamurti, Tapomurti, Jnanamurti, Karunamurti. Sri Ramakrishna. When he did sadhana, how did he do? How did he practice the disciplines? With utmost carefulness, with utmost sincerity, with utmost straightforwardness, he practiced. All his teachings have been generated on account of his most wonderful spiritual practices. What he had said, himself had practiced. So there is life in his teachings. There is life in his teachings. If your mind is ready, you will be able to recognize the life. If you are dead, of course you cannot see anything in what Sri Ramakrishna has said. You have to be ready mentally. You have to turn willingly towards God. You have to turn willingly towards spiritual life. Then there is hope. The turning to spirituality is to be done first from your side. Turn to God, then God will look into you. You will see God is always looking at you. That you realize only when you turn yourself towards Him. Turning to God totally is what is called spiritual practice. We are trying our best to turn towards God. We fail miserably on account of all sorts of inherent tendencies that take us away from God. Still, we have to struggle and struggle. As a child separated from its mother longs for her presence, so Sri Ramakrishna prayed. He beseeched, he wept for Kali like a forlorn child when she did not materialize. Sometimes in great longing of soul, he would retire into the jungle not far from temple and meditate under the Amalaki tree. How he meditated? He meditated there, sans clothes. He meditated there, sans his sacred thread, sans food and water. When Kali did not show herself, his intense longing would become unbearable. He would cry out, "Oh mother, another day is gone in vain." Could it be that thou does not exist? Art thou merely a dream of deceased minds? Why are you not showing up? That was his longing. And Divine Mother tested him to the maximum. When she was convinced that he was totally purified to receive that vision, she just appeared before him. When his elders proposed matrimony as a possible cure for his unnatural behavior, it was unnatural for the people in the world. Because he was crying, he was smiling, he was talking. People couldn't understand. So they thought, probably, if he was married, then he would be freed from all this peculiar behavior. They were searching and searching for the bride, they couldn't get. Finally, they were all almost disappointed when Sri Ramakrishna himself suggested, "Go and see. The bride is there in the particular village." It was a fact. And went through this ritual of marriage. Sri Ramakrishna was wedded to Sri Sharda Devi. Every incident in Sri Ramakrishna's life will create thrill in us. How great significance is there in every part of Sri Ramakrishna's life. When the bride did come to join him 12 years later, in the full bloom of youth, Sri Ramakrishna welcomed her, gave a hearty welcome to her, not as a wife, but as the Divine Mother incarnate. And throughout his life, both of them, Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother, were committed to an unusual partnership in celibacy. Both were masters of renunciation. Both were equal in renunciation. By that process, he taught that the impure or sexually oriented attitude towards a woman must be eschewed by spiritual aspirants. He said that to regard all women as one's own mother is a very, very good attitude, Of course, he spoke from the Indian context. In Indian context, mother is respected to the maximum. Mother is considered as God Himself. Matrudevo bhava, Pitradevo bhava, Acharya Devo bhava. Upanishad says, father and mother, they are the veritable gods on this earth. How much they sacrifice for their children. How much they love their children. So, Sri Ramakrishna, shown through his own example, how he regarded all the women as the veritable manifestations of the Divine Mother. Sri Ramakrishna's attitude towards Kamakanchan, lust and lucre, was one of uncompromising revulsion. He taught that one who wants to attain God, do you want to see God really? If that is so, you must renounce both Kama and Kanchan. Lust and money, lust and wealth, symbolized for him desire in its grossest form, which binds man to the world, making God experience impossible. But on this account, he didn't decry the value of a householder's life. His plea was that even as one carried on his worldly duties according to dharma, he shouldn't lose sight of the higher goal, which was both moral and spiritual. He said, yes, you can perform your household duties to earn, to maintain your family, but only as much as you need for your livelihood. At the same time, you must pray to God, "O God, make my worldly duties fewer and fewer. I find that I forget Thee when I am involved in too many activities." On another occasion, Sri Ramakrishna observed, there is nothing wrong in your being in the world of activity. Do your duty with your one hand and hold on to God with the other. After the duty is over, you will hold on to God with both hands. Sri Ramakrishna, how many ways he would give his teachings, lead the people towards spirituality. It's remarkable. On one occasion, while discussing with Bankim Chandra, a famous man of the time, the relevance of scholarship for knowing God, Sri Ramakrishna said, why do you bother so much about the world, about the creation, about science and all that? Your business is to eat mangoes. What need have you to know how many hundreds of trees there are in the orchard? How many thousands of branches? And how many millions of leaves? Why are you wasting time in knowing about all these things? You have come to the garden to eat mangoes. Go ahead and eat them. See how nicely Sri Ramakrishna has taught. Man is born in this world. He has born in this world to realize God. It is not good to forget that and divert the mind to other things. Another important point which we should note in Sri Ramakrishna's life. Sri Ramakrishna did not believe in miracle mongering. Miracle mongering. He condemned miracles and miracle men as wanderers from the path of truth. With their minds entangled in the meshes of psychic powers. He tells a parable. After a long penance and practice, a man learnt the art of walking on water. After following the discipline for many years, he got this power. Referring to this man, Sri Ramakrishna said, what that man achieved after a lifetime of exertion could have been accomplished by paying a few cents for a boatman who would have ferried him across the river. He always spoke in the simple language of common men. But he had a wonderful ability to use appropriate parables and stories to illustrate his every point. Those stories and parables often had a touch of humor and ridicule. Sri Ramakrishna loved to sing. Singing, what a great art it is. We are all blessed. God has given this faculty of singing. Sri Ramakrishna himself had a good voice. And as lofty ideas melted into the melody of a song, he experienced divine joy. If anybody would sing the hymns on gods, immediately Sri Ramakrishna would get into a state of ecstasy. To him, to Sri Ramakrishna, music was the language of God. A reminder that we live in a world which is a compound of harmony, melody and rhythm. There's a famous saying, Robert Browning said, there is no truer truth obtainable by man than comes of music. Sri Ramakrishna remarked, there is a special manifestation of God's power in a person who has an outstanding gift for music. The way of music is to suggest, and if it's literature, to affirm and to guide. That's why when people would come to him to meet him, before he would start talking to them, he would tell them to sing a song. When Swami Vivekananda came to Sri Ramakrishna to meet him, whose life was totally transformed by seeing Sri Ramakrishna, by the look of Sri Ramakrishna, by the touch of Sri Ramakrishna, by the love of Sri Ramakrishna. Swami Vivekananda said his previous name was Narendranath. Sri Ramakrishna created Vivekananda. And whenever Swami Vivekananda came to Sri Ramakrishna would always tell him, "Let me hear a song from you." And Vivekananda would sing with a melodious voice he had. The whole atmosphere would be charged with spirituality. And Sri Ramakrishna was enjoying, and his mind was totally in ecstasy on such occasions. Sri Ramakrishna said at times that scholarship by itself could be a hindrance rather than a help to God realization, because to an honest seeker, every accretion of knowledge only reveals new areas of ignorance. But on this account he did not decry learning or learned people. He observed, "As long as I live, so long do I learn." So, Sri Ramakrishna's message of universality and the harmony of all religions crossed oceans and continents through his master disciple Vivekananda. One day, Sri Ramakrishna called Vivekananda. He touched him. It is a blessing, as it were. And he blessed him and said, "Look, today I have given you my all, and I am no better than a fakir, possessing nothing, with the powers I have transmitted to you, you will accomplish great things in the world. Not until this is accomplished will you return to your source." What we see today, in the light of this torch, is not a new religion or a new dogma, but the implant of a new seed and new hope into this critical age. In Swami Vivekananda's words, Sri Ramakrishna's message was to proclaim and make clear the fundamental unity of all religions. this great teacher of the 19th century, made no claim for himself because he had realized that in reality they are all part and parcel of the one eternal religion. In Sanskrit it is called Sanatana Dharma. As a lamp does not burn without oil, so a man cannot live without God. God is in all men, but all men are not in God. That's the reason for man's suffering. These are the words of Sri Ramakrishna. This was his deep conviction. After his many years of religious austerities, when his young disciples began to come to him, Sri Ramakrishna came face to face with the conditions of despair, ugliness, hypocrisy, ignorance, and the intellectual and spiritual turmoil that raged in the country. The situation was confusing, challenging, and unnerving. The educated few were under the spell of Europe's industrial culture. Sri Ramakrishna's coming into contact with men of great learning like Keshav Chandra Sen, Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar. After finding the way, what more need is there of books and scriptures? Then comes the time for action. Time for action. Sri Ramakrishna's life and energy was exhausted by his incurable illness before his message could reach the wider audience of the world. The time for action that he spoke began only when his master disciple Swami Vivekananda took over Sri Ramakrishna's unfinished task. As I said earlier, through humorous incidents, through stories and parables, Sri Ramakrishna would impart spiritual ideas into the aspirants. If you read Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, you find every page has a story, a parable, a humorous incident. It's so lively. If you read Gospel, it releases your mind from all burdens. It gives a kind of peacefulness. You will enjoy reading. You will never get bored if you read Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. You will be cheerful. You will be free from worries, all sorts of things. So to give a few examples of what he had told. Once, many passengers were crossing the river Ganges in a boat. There was one Pandit among them. He was very proud of his scholarship, very egoistic. Of course, there is reason for him to be proud of what he was. The reason was he had studied many books. He was a great scholar in the academic sense. That's true. So he was proud. Well, he wanted to show himself to the people that he was a great scholar. So he just asked one of his fellow passengers, "Well, do you know Vedanta?" The man who was sitting by his side, he just said, "Oh, no sir, I don't know." "Do you know Sankhya? Do you know Patanjala?" He's referring big spiritual texts. And the friend was telling, I don't know. Have you read no philosophy whatsoever? "Oh no sir, I have not read anything." "What? You have not read any of these things and your life has been wasted. What have you been doing all these years?" He was boasting himself that he knew all this very well. But the fellow passenger was sitting in silence. After some time, a great storm arose. As a result, the boat was about to sink. All the passengers in the boat, they were all frightened. Life and death problem now. Who will save them? The friend was sitting by the side of the Pandit, whom the Pandit questioned him continuously, boasting his knowledge. This friend asked him, "Sir, can you swim?" The Pandit's face was very sad. He said, "No." Even he has no voice to say no. He had become so weak and frightened. Then this co-passenger, he just smiled and said, "Well sir, I don't know your Sankhya, I don't know your Vedanta, but I know how to swim." What will a man gain by knowing many scriptures? The one thing needful is to know how to cross the river of the world. Samsara Sagar. Samsara Sagaram Ghoram Tattumicchata Yojanaha. Gita Navun Samaruhya Paramyati Sukhena Saha. Whoever wants to cross this ocean of the world, he should sit on the boat of Gita. He will simply cross over the river. God alone is real and all else illusory. See, through this simple parable, what a tremendous spiritual teaching Sri Ramakrishna is giving. In another incident, you know the story of Mahabharata. It's a big story, no doubt. It's a fantastic story. All these Kauravas and Pandavas, they were all trained under one teacher. His name was Drona. He taught them how to use the weapons and so on. He was very much fascinated by Arjun on account of his talents and skills. So, one day, they were all assembled in a place and following the instructions of Drona, Arjun was aiming his arrow. He was aiming his arrow at the eye of the bird. The bird was sitting on the top of the tree on a particular branch, and Arjun is targeting the eye of the bird. Drona wanted to test him. He just asked him while he was aiming at that. Well, what do you see? Do you see these kings? There were many people there. All the elders had assembled. Arjun never raised his face, never looked in any other direction, but simply answered, "No, sir." That's all the answer he did. Drona did not keep quiet. He went on asking him. "Do you see me?" "No." "Do you see the tree?" "No." What? He's aiming his arrow on the bird sitting on the top of a tree. But he's saying he's not seeing the tree. "Well, do you see the bird on the tree?" "No." "What do you see then?" Then Arjun said, "Only the eye of the bird. Only the eye of the bird. He who sees only the eye of the bird can hit the mark. He alone is clever. Who says that God is real and all else illusory. What need have I of other information?" That's the concentration. How one should concentrate thoroughly to achieve the result. This is the example. We have to train the mind. We have to exert very thoroughly. Very important. Without prayatna, without your effort, you can't achieve anything. On another occasion, Sri Ramakrishna explained the course of spiritual disciplines is of three kinds. One is of the nature of birds, the other one of the nature of monkeys, and the third one of the nature of ants. Broad classification. Now, what's the nature of the bird? The bird comes and pecks at a fruit, which perhaps falls down at the jerk, and the bird loses it. So, there are devotees who try to rush their devotional practices with such violence that their attempts are often frustrated. Secondly, the nature of the monkey. It is to jump from branch to branch holding a fruit in its mouth. And while jumping, the fruit often falls out. Thus, at times, distracted by the changing events of life, the aspirants lose sight of the devotional path if the grasp is not firm. The third one, the ants. The ants, they creep gently and steadily towards grains of food. If you study the ant, how it carries the grain back to its hole, where it enjoys it completely and comfortably. The course of sadhana, like that of the ant, he is considered the best. There is sureness of attaining and enjoying the fruit. These are the words of Sri Ramakrishna. We have to follow many things while doing spiritual, practicing spiritual life. He said a parable. Once upon a time, a snake was dwelling in a certain place. Nobody would dare to come nearby, because instantly they would be bitten to death. It was a ferocious snake. Immediately it would jump and bite them. So people were terribly afraid to move about near the place where the snake lived. One day a holy man passed along the road. He just came nearby the place where the snake lived. As usual, the serpent went after the sage to bite him. But on approaching the holy man, what happened was, the snake lost all its ferocity. It was overpowered by the gentleness of the yogi. The yogi saw the snake and said, "Well, friend, you want to bite me?" The snake was abashed and made no reply. Then the sage said, "Well, don't injure anybody in the future." The words were so effective, were so affectionate. The snake, he bowed down and nodded assent. Actually, it became the disciple of this sage in a way. The sage went on his way. The snake entered its hole. Thereafter, he lived a life of innocence and purity without even attempting to harm anybody. Just he began to live himself, not bothering anyone. In a few days, all the neighborhood, they began to think probably the serpent had lost all its venom, poison. Now, it is no more dangerous. Thinking that way, everyone began to tease the snake. Some pelted him. Others dragged him mercilessly by the tail. In this way, there was no end to the troubles of the snake. Fortunately, the sage again passed by that way. He was shocked to see the whole body of the snake was bruised. He was very sad and he was very much moved. Why the snake was reduced to this state? And he inquired the cause of its distress. Then the snake replied, "Sir, I followed your instruction. You said don't injure anybody. So I followed that. But alas, these people, they are merciless." The sage smilingly said, "My dear friend, I simply advised you not to bite anyone, but I did not tell you not to frighten them. See, this is a very significant statement. Although you should not bite any creature, still you should keep everybody at a considerable distance by hissing at them. Hissing. Similarly, if you live in the world, make yourself feared and respected. Don't injure anyone, but at the same time, be not injured by others. You must follow this technique in order to continue your spiritual sadhana without any hindrance. This way, Sri Ramakrishna has said many, many things. I wish all of you could read Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna and enjoy the teachings and practice them in your life according to your capacity. With these words, I conclude my talk. Thank you very much. Sahana bhavatu sahanau bhunaktu sahaviryam karavavagai tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. May the Divine Lord protect us. May He nourish us. May we work in harmony with great vigor. May our study be illuminating and fruitful. May we not hate each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.